Okay, this is my fourth attempt at this video, and I really hope that this comes out okay. I'm using a new gimbal. I have tried OBS. I recorded 2 OBS videos, and for some reason, the audio quality is not coming out very good at all. So I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way, and I'm going to overlay some of these stats so you can follow along. I'm going to start with Northern New Brunswick. So Northern New Brunswick is still technically in a seller's market for the month of June, but with all things in New Brunswick, you can't really use single month data because it's such a small sample size. Okay, yeah, so starting with Northern New Brunswick, it's one of those markets that's just always been slow. Even when it was hot, it's not been a hot market. So Northern New Brunswick right now is sitting at a sale to new listing ratio of 61.9%. This is actually just a little bit down from last year. However, it is better than 2023. Unfortunately, with all things New Brunswick, I can't really do much with single month sample sizes. So I'm instead going to focus on year to date. I'm going to try and do this really quick because there's a lot of different areas in New Brunswick, and I want to focus more on Moncton, the one that I actually sell in. So the sales are up. Like, you're going to see this throughout New Brunswick that the sales are up. However, the new listing and the active inventory is up everywhere except for Northern New Brunswick. Northern New Brunswick active inventory is up 1%. New listings are up 6.1%. Not really a whole lot. It's really showing its signs of being a slow market. However, the months of inventory, it's actually better than it's been the last 2 years, year to date. And the sale to new listing ratio of 58.7% is still technically in seller's market, or is still technically below seller's market territory, but it's on the upper end of balanced. All right, now to St. John. So St. John was listed as being one of the most or the most exposed cities for tariffs. However, their real estate market is showing a lot of resilience right now. I've been quite optimistic about St. John for some time. Locals tend to dunk on St. John. I don't know why. It's just kind of been a thing. But really, St. John is doing quite well. They're doing a lot of really interesting things with their uptown core. And of course, the port of St. John has something that nowhere else in New Brunswick really has, and that's the capacity to ship our exports out, not just to America, but overseas if we need to. And I think because of that, St. John probably has the most upside out of any of the areas in New Brunswick. With that being said, I do believe there is some volatility in St. John, but so far it's not really shown any downside of that volatility. The sale to new listing ratio is 63.2%. Of course, it's not last June's 90.8%, but it is still hot. It's still in seller's market territory. The average price was up 18.1% for June, and the median was up 27.1%. This is a small sample size of 218 sales, so I'm not really going to go too much into that, and we're going to focus more on year to date. So the sales were up 2.3% year to date. New listings were up 8.4%, but active inventory was down negative 4.2%. So kind of a weird market. Nobody else or nowhere else in New Brunswick is really showing this kind of data. And it's definitely something to monitor. The months of inventory, 3.2, average price, 372, the median, 336.5. Really, really hot market. The price points are pretty reasonable overall for St. John. I definitely think St. John should be more expensive than Moncton, generally speaking. But yeah, it's one of those markets. I think it's got the most upside, but I also think it has the most volatility. All right, now let's talk about Fredericton. I'm going to do this one really quick because Fredericton is so stable that it's almost boring. They're like most places in New Brunswick. It's technically slower than last year, and most of the stats are not as good. Sales are down, new listings are up. Active inventory is basically flat. However, it's still a pretty stable market. The sale to list price ratio of 100.4% for June is pretty crazy. Months of inventory 2.5, sale to new listing ratio basically 70%. And year to date, it's still firmly in seller's market territory at 66.8%. And basically all of the data is pretty strong for Fredericton. Fredericton's unique because it has CFB Gagetown, so there are a lot of military jobs, there's a lot of forestry jobs, there's also a lot of government jobs, and they have 2 universities in their downtown core. Overall, Fredericton should perform as the safest market in New Brunswick. Okay, now we're on to Moncton. Before I get into the stats about Moncton, I want to share some personal anecdotes between listings I've had, sales I've had, buyers I've worked with, things that I've noticed on the ground. The first thing I'll say is that I've noticed that the market for basement apartments, so raised ranches and bungalows with basement apartments, has basically fallen off a cliff. It's nowhere close to what it's been even in the second half of 2023 and 2024. It's very different. I don't know exactly where the prices will go, but they don't seem to be where they were. So it feels like they've already come down quite a bit. The other thing is homes over 500K are really hard to move right now. I don't know what it is. You can price it well. It's just that there are not a lot of buyers with that budget that can afford it. And the ones that are there are very picky and very demanding. They understand what type of market we're in. So if you're selling a home over 500K or you're buying one, it's almost a different market entirely than under 400K. About 20% of the homes that sold in June were listed over 500K, which is not a lot. All right, now on to the data itself. And again, I'm sorry if this is distracting. I'm looking at the data as I talk. I know it might be a little bit weird, but I'm going to overlay this so you can follow along, and I'll try and make my video smaller so you can see this more clearly. I haven't even decided. I might actually just totally crop my face out so you can just see the stats and follow along. So Moncton for the month of June, the months of inventory was up. The sale to new listing ratio was technically up from 58.6% last June to 59.6%. It's been a weird year. It's almost been like a delayed spring market, and it's definitely felt like the momentum has begun to fall off a cliff over the last 2 weeks. So we'll see where July goes, but June was uncharacteristically good for that. But I don't believe it's going to last. So the average price, 390K, which feels completely crazy to me. The median, 373. Again, it feels crazy. And then the sale to list price ratio of 97.3%. I'm not going to look too much at the single month data. We're just going to jump to year to date right now. So the sales year to date are up 4.1%. And you're probably going to hear this everywhere about how sales are up. However, what you might not hear is that the new listings are up 9.6% and the active listings are up 30.2%. And to give you an idea of how crazy this is, the amount of inventory we have right now is almost 100% more than what we had this time in 2022. It's a much more different market. The sale to new listing ratio is 58.8%. So it's not seller's market territory. And it's the slowest June that we've had since about 2018. A little bit better than then, but not by much. The months of inventory, 4.1. I don't think months of inventory is a great statistic in a place like New Brunswick because our our sample sizes are really small for our data. I think the sale to new listing ratio is a more real-time indicator of where the market is. It's basically just the supply and demand, and you can't skew it with terminations or withdrawals. The average price is up 3.6%, the median is up 2.4%, and the sale to list price ratio is down quite a bit. On average, homes are selling about 3% under their asking price, which is substantial. And this is really cool when you look at the comparison from 2022. So since 2022, and this is year to date, so January through the end of June from this year compared to 2022, sales are down 12.5%. The dollar volume of all deals are down negative 0.52%. New listings are up 5%. Active inventory is up almost 100%. The sale to new listing ratio is down over 12%. Months of inventory is more than doubled. Yet the average price and the median price has gone up 8.3%, which is crazy. In fact, the average and the median price went up more than double digits, 14 and 13% since June of 2023, that same sample size of January to the end of June. Which begs the question, every other statistic in our market has been clearly pointing downwards, but the prices have been going up. I have some thoughts. Obviously, I have some thoughts. I'm not allowed to say everything I want to say, but really be careful out there. There are good deals, and there's never a bad time to get a good deal. But there's not a huge reason to go over asking on probably most properties right now. I would try to get some value on the buying side of anything that you see out there. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different when you're close to the median price or under it. But if you're buying something over 500K right now, you're not competing with a lot of people. All right, now let's get into the individual markets of Moncton. So the greater Moncton area is a huge area. It's everything from like Shediac, Richibucto, Rexton, Bouctouche, all the way down to places like Elgin, Salisbury, everywhere up until Sussex and everywhere north up until Miramichi, basically. And then all the way out till even Port Elgin, which is really close to the PEI bridge. So it's a really broad area, and it's kind of tricky to divide it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly cover the three different main areas, the Moncton, Dieppe, and the Riverview, without going too much detail into the sub areas of these regions. So let's start with Moncton. So Moncton Center, Moncton East, Moncton North, and Moncton West. I've kind of grouped these all together right now. They're obviously very different areas, and there's not really much of a point in doing individual ones. So Moncton Center, that is places like Birchmount, the Hospital North End, downtown Moncton. areas near Norwood, Essex, near Trimble, a lot of those areas. And it's also areas like Centennial, the Old West End, Fernwood, New West End, really, really high end areas. But yeah, it's a mixed bag. And then Moncton East, same situation. You have, Grove Hamlet, Savannah Heights, Camelot Estates, Shediac Road. And then you have areas like, Maclise, Beechwood, not super amazing areas in the same region as really good areas. It's just one of the things with Moncton that exists. And then, of course, you have Moncton West, which is literally just a few subdivisions off of Salisbury Road. I don't know why it has its own category, but I'll get into that. And then you have Moncton North, which, of course, most people know about. It's like the higher end area of our city, at least the Moncton region, has really, really good areas in it. And then areas that are also good, but priced way too high for what they are. So, for example, the values in Kingswood Park, still really good for some reason. Now, obviously, Kingswood's a little bit older. You get some chopped up homes, but when you compare that to the amount of money that you're paying for much smaller houses in the Evergreen regions or even in the Hildegard subdivisions, the value is not even close. The values in Kingswood are great, but there's definitely a lot of areas in the North End that might be priced a little bit high. Again, when you buy in the North End, this is probably the best advice anyone could give you about buying in the North End. You want to make sure that you got the right school zoning in the North End, and you want to make sure that you're not on a super busy street. Because with the North End, it's all good, but you want to be in the better part of the North End because you don't want to own the nicest house on a very busy street. You want to own, a house that might be a little bit dated, that might need a little bit of work on a quiet street. That's why I like places like Kingswood. You got big, mature lots, lots of parks. And again, that's one of the problems sometimes with North End subdivisions is that they're clear cut and there's not really a lot of trees left behind. So yeah, that's my Moncton North rant. But basically the numbers for the Moncton area, the average basically 400K and then the median 370. I can't even comment on that because it's such a broad area that there's just too many variables that go into it. But there are certain areas and subtypes of houses that I feel are just way too expensive for what they are. Mainly the semi-detached, specifically the semi-splits. And even right now, a lot of the homes with the basement apartments I find are quite expensive for what they are. But definitely there are some good deals out there and you can create them. One of the best ways to find good deals is to look at homes that have been sitting on the market for like 15, 16, 17 days. A lot of the time what happens there, they're either priced too high and they don't get the momentum, or they had a deal that fell apart for whatever reason that may be. And you can sometimes get really good deals. And also homes that are on less busy streets that don't get the amount of traffic, people just kind of forget they exist. And you can get really nice deals on crescents, cul-de-sacs, and quiet streets. Now into Dieppe. So Dieppe has basically 4 different areas in it. Dieppe Fox Creek, Dieppe East by the airport, Dieppe Chartersville, which is further up Acadie or Amiro, I forget the name of the street. But when you go up towards Champlain, you can go straight through Champlain or you can take a right. I think it's Acadie, but you take a right there, keep going, you'll eventually hit Chartersville. That's that area. And then you have Dieppe Center. So that's the area is basically close to the mall. So Orléans, Thibodaux, Gould, those sort of streets, Virginia. I love the values in central Dieppe. They're really, really good for what it is and for what Dieppe is doing. To be close to that downtown Dieppe core is an extremely valuable thing, I think. And I think you can't really go wrong in central Dieppe. Dieppe Chartersville is sort of like the north end of Dieppe. However, Dieppe itself is all really good. There are not really any bad areas in Dieppe, but Dieppe Chartersville is just a little bit further away. It's a little bit more catered towards families, and there are definitely a lot more houses with huge property sizes. Like, it's not uncommon to find a house in Chartersville that has, half an acre, 3/4 of an acre, or a full acre lot. If you want a big house and you have a family, Dieppe Chartersville probably is the best bet for Dieppe, even if you're on a budget. It's not a cheap area, but the amount of value that you get for the lot sizes and the house sizes, it's unparalleled. Dieppe Center is more for like people like me who, want to be close to the action, want to be close to the markets, want to be close to like trails, stuff like that. And Dieppe Chartersville is definitely more family oriented. Now Dieppe East. Dieppe East is a little bit niche. You're getting a little bit close to Skuduk. It's close to the airport. For a long time, Dieppe East was not a very good area. So streets like Tower Drive. However, over time, what's happening with Dieppe East is it's actually starting to connect and get really close to not Fox Creek Golf Community, but it's getting close to streets that are close to the Fox Creek Golf Community, which brings us to the next area, Dieppe Fox Creek. Dieppe Fox Creek is often confused with the Dieppe Fox Creek Golf Community. Dieppe Fox Creek is sort of like a quasi-rural part of Dieppe that gets really close to Greater Lakeburn. And there are a lot of really nice homes there, but you don't want to be one of those people that are paying Dieppe Fox Creek Golf Community prices for just Fox Creek. Again, it's a fine area, but Dieppe Fox Creek Golf Community is where you're going to find the most jaw-dropping, most expensive, nice homes in the city. So Moncton, Dieppe, Riverview, none of them have a real answer for Dieppe Fox Creek. Even Moncton East with Royal Oaks. Royal Oaks does not come close to Dieppe Fox Creek. And I like Royal Oaks, but Dieppe Fox Creek is, or Golf Community is a very special area and it's very expensive. Definitely drive through it sometime if you want to see what the best homes in Moncton look like. Now, lastly, Riverview. Riverview is very interesting. You have a interesting combination of homes. You have streets like Cleveland, Yale, which are, a lot of, 1940s, 1950s, early 60s homes that are large and present good value. But then you have a lot of Dobson built homes from like the 60s up through the 80s and, bungalows, raised ranches that are very first time buyer friendly, really good for those first time buyers and very popular for them. And then you have areas like Great Brook Estates and McAllister Park, which are the more high-end areas of Riverview. Overall, Riverview is kind of a mixed bag, but there's a lot of really nice value there. Average price $400K, median price $370K, so a little bit cheaper than Dieppe, but I like the values quite a bit. And of course, the Dieppe, the average price, $20K more expensive, $420K average. The median's almost $400K, but I like the Dieppe values quite a bit, and I think there's a lot more room to grow there. Now, of course, this is real estate advice, but it might not be applicable to your specific situation, so make sure you consult relevant professionals prior to making financial decisions. The opinions in this video are my own. They do not represent the other members of the Canadian Real Estate Association, the New Brunswick Real Estate Board, other realtors, or my own office. If you have any questions or if you want me to cover anything different in any of my future videos, please let me know, and I'll make sure to do that right away. Thank you very much, and please like and subscribe.